Okay, so I know a lot of you have been asking me about like how I paint because I'm in this new digital painting class, and it's not really available to a lot of you because of the game requirements, the modeling requirement. Although my teacher did actually say, because I brought it up to him Thursday, what was that, 3 days ago? So you don't know, I don't know when anybody's gonna watch this video, so whatever. I asked him, and he had said that tons of people took the class without the prereqs anyways. Mason's kind of weird about this stuff, I don't know. So anyway, I thought I would do like a real quick, like maybe 30 minutes, maybe 45 minutes video on just like the real, like, meat and potatoes way of how I'm doing this. Oh, BattleNet's up. Let's close that. Man, I'm such a good streamer. Okay, so we'll do like, cause a lot of people have been asking me, and I feel kind of bad because I don't have like a good answer, cause the way that we were taught was like really simple, and there weren't like a lot of like tricks to just like verbally explain or give. So I figured I could do like just like a real quick, like almost redo of one of my first assignments, which was the like recreation of the self-portrait picture I took. So, uh, it's worth mentioning that in order to do this, you need to have Photoshop, and you need to have a tablet with pressure sensitivity for the pen. I don't know if they make any tablets that don't have pressure sensitivity, but you do need it. Um, that's the like number one, basically only thing that you even ever use to blend stuff together. And then after that, it's all just like really simple stuff that we can totally, like, it's very easily transferable and stuff like that. So basically, I've got like my reference photo, right? We're gonna this one at least I just like basically copied it from the photo. So I've already got this like line drawing here, which is like really spooky. And this was actually not even what I used for the first one. I was like really dumb and I didn't even do a good sketch. But it's definitely helpful. So basically what we did is you like tear this off of the bar up here, and it becomes like a separate window. And then you can right click on here, like on the actual bar here, and duplicate it, and it'll make like a second one for you. And then you tear this one off at this bar, and then like this is the one you're gonna work on, right? So you can like come over here, save this one as like stream, except you have to save it as a PSD, haha. And then from there, this is going to be the one that you work on. So we can go ahead and do, not that, we can do a new layer. You can keep the reference on here if you want to. We're not going to like draw over it, because that doesn't really work as well as you think it should. I did that with my last one, and you end up with a lot of like, you think you've drawn this part over here, and you think you've drawn this part over here, and then when you turn this off, there's like space in between, and it like looks really awful, and it takes way more work to actually clean it up than it does to just do it originally from the beginning. But it would probably be good to do your sketch on this one. I'm just gonna copy the sketch over that I already did. Is snap on? What is that? Is that Control U? Control Shift apostrophe? No. Okay, so what is it? View, snap, Shift Control, semicolon. Okay. And then this should just, yeah, snap right into the corner. Cool. And I can close my old one. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to look at this one, and then you're going to draw on this one. And then this is also helpful to have this one for like color picking, and getting like actual tones correctly and being able to look at it and stuff like that. So we'll go ahead and turn this off. Delete that weird little thing. And so this is my little sketch. I called it line drawing. We can call it sketch. And then underneath it, you're gonna like do all of your actual drawing. And that way you can still see the sketch over on top of it as you're doing it. And then eventually at some point we'll get like enough down here that you just get rid of the sketch and you've got your drawing underneath. So first things first, what I really enjoy doing is I like to fill the entire thing with a 50% middle gray. And there's a couple ways to do this. I'm going to try and teach as many like little hotkeys and stuff like that as I can too, because I know some of the like more well-known hotkeys like Control Shift N is new layer, like that kind of stuff, like a lot of people know, but there's a lot of like brush ones that you would never know unless you've really painted before, because you would never really use them in any other way. So the easiest way obviously is you just go into your color picker, you get like 50% gray. You can tell by this little thing right here, or if you're like a super mathematician, you can do like I guess it would be 128, because that's half of 256, but you get the idea. You get 50% gray. It's in the middle. And then you get your little paint bucket and you splash it in. Another way to do it, which is a little better, because like let's say the thing about the paint bucket is like it fills like chunks. And there shouldn't be anything on this layer because it's all alone, but just for the sake of teaching hotkeys, you can go up to, I think it's in here. No, that's something different. I only know it by the hotkey, I guess. Oh, there it is. Yeah, it's Edit Fill or Shift F5. And you hit that, and it'll ask you. The cool thing about this is, you can either use your foreground color or your background color that you've already chosen over here in your color palette, or it's got just some like blanket options for you. So like right here, it's already got a 50% gray. You're doing 100% opacity, you're not doing anything in the blending mode, you hit OK, and it just plops the whole thing. And that will fill it no matter what else you have in your layer. So like if I did this with my sketch layer, if I hit the right button, Shift F5, it'll just cover everything. So it's just it's a little quicker. And then the other thing I guess I'll go ahead and mention, or like the setup for our brush. Basically, if you right click, it will bring up your brush settings. There's like two different kinds of brush settings. There's like the ones over here, which is the actual brush window. In case you don't have that up, you can go to window, I think it's brush presets. And then I guess the brush, this one is what you get. No, this is what we want, yeah. And this has a more like detailed version of all the different brushes that you've got. These are all the default ones. I don't have any like fancy ones or anything. And we're literally just basically going to always use the default brush, which is just this little top one up here. And you can, I think I usually have smoothing on, and then I don't put anything else on there. It's just the regular old super default brush. And then hotkey wise, you can hit the left bracket button, which is to the right of the P key, and that makes your brush smaller. So like right now it's like itty bitty, it's so small you can't even see it. You also can't see it because I'm drawing gray on gray. Haha. Yeah. And then if you hit the right bracket, and you can either just hit it once to make it a little bigger, or you can hold it and it'll just go boom 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 boom. And that controls your brush size, which is super useful, so you don't have to come all the way up here and then like drag it up or drag it down. You can be like, oh, that's not quite big enough, or like, oh, I want to match exactly how big my sketching was here, so like this is about like 35, and then I'm like, no wait, I want it a little bigger. You pop it a couple more times. Helps a lot. The other thing is a couple like zoom hotkeys, one of which I just kind of like screwed up here. Yeah, I did. Most unfortunate. If you do Control 0, it will zoom all the way out. It'll like make it like full screen. The issue with doing that when you've got two little tiny separate windows like I do here is it'll like maximize it. And since you're presumably drawing from like one to the other, you probably don't want to do that because then the windows are a little different. But under normal circumstances, it's totally fine. The standard hotkeys that pretty much everyone I imagine would know is Control plus goes in and Control minus goes out. One that I really like using is you know, most people, again, they know spacebar. You hold that down, it becomes a little hand, and then you can kind of like push it around if you click. In this case, if you push your little pen down. My favorite one is you hold Control and then spacebar, and then when you press, you can like drag to the right to go in and left to go out, and it's like really fast. Like you can be like, oh yeah, I definitely want to draw right here on the lips, and then you draw a little bit, and you're like, what does that look like? And you're like, okay, it looks awful, and you erase it, and then you back out, and you're like, okay, cool, and then you go back in. It's just super responsive, super fast. I'm a big fan. What else is there? B is brush, E is erase, and that's pretty much it. The only other thing that's worth mentioning, I think we can just go over the brushes a little bit. So, here's another hotkey. So, your number pad, not the numbers on top of your keyboard, like the 1 through 0 that are above, like Q through P, not those. The actual number pad, which some of you laptop users might not have on your laptop. I don't actually know. But the number pad on like regular keyboards, or on like wide laptops that have them, each number basically corresponds to the opacity. So for instance, if I hit 5 on my number pad, you can see my opacity goes straight to 50. If I hit 1, it goes to 10%. If I hit 8, it goes to 80. 0 is 100. And then if you're going like really crazy, like for some reason you want like 63, you can just hit 63 and it'll do it. So that's also a big help in terms of just like going faster. Like if you're drawing something and you're like, okay, this isn't enough, I want full, you just hit 0 and then you go right back in. You're like, okay, never mind, I want half. Okay, never mind, I just want to do a tiny bit. I'm just like adding some shadow under here or something like that. And then you can like layer it. So definitely a big time saver. And then this button right here, unfortunately there's no hotkey for it, or at least not one that I know of. I've done like a little Google searching and I couldn't find any. This button turns on the opacity on pen pressure, which you can also get over here in the window brush menu. Please go away. Okay. So the reason why I like using this button here is because if you have transfer, it's called transfer by the way, it's kind of strange. And then you do want to make sure, I don't know if this is on by default, in the transfer options, you click it inside the brush menu, you want to make sure the control is set to pen pressure, meaning that pen pressure is going to control the opacity. So for example, why don't I get on a new layer here just so I'm not like screwing up my sketch over and over again. So for example, we've got transfer on here. So if I do it, and we're at 100%, and if I do it really lightly, it goes really light, and then the more I push, the darker it gets, going all the way to full opacity that just covers up everything, going all the way down to little. So this is what you use to like blend two colors together. So for example, like if I wanted to like do a little bit of a shadow over here, and then I wanted to do like some white over here, and then you just start doing like little by little, very low opacity, and then you start to get like the middle tones in between. And that's what really helps you like blend two colors together. That's what gets you like some of these like darker shadows in with the lights, and then the dark and then the light, and like they don't look like you're just doing like this and you're like painting right on top of itself, which is not going to look very good. It's not going to give you that painterly look that digital painting can give you. So I think that's most of it. The only other thing, oh yeah, so the reason why I like this button is because sometimes you want transfer on and sometimes you want it off, and it's a little more couple more steps to like open this window, hit this button, close this window, and then transfers off. So what you can do is you can hit this button up here and it will turn it on for you. So like if I hit this button, you can see it's got like the dark box and then the little transfer thing gets checked. If I hit it again, I messed up because I hit it, but you can see it's on, off. And that's way easier for me. But you have to make sure that it's off over here on this brush, because if it's on, it like supersedes or like trumps this little thing. It like goes over it. So I like to leave it off, and then I can choose it this way. And I don't like to use shape dynamics either, which is this button, or it's the one in here. This makes it so if you press a little bit it's small and then it gets big. But the issue with this is if you're trying to do like shadows and stuff, you can only make tiny light shadows and you can only make huge dark shadows. I guess I should have done that in black, but you get the idea. So it gives you a little less control. Like if I wanted to do a big, like just a little light shadow here underneath the hair, but I wanted it to cover a large range, I'd have to like brush like this whole area. And if I wanted, like, because if I press the whole time, it just makes a big dark one. And we don't really want that. So I think there's like 1 or 2 times ever this whole class I've ever used it. I basically just don't use it. And our teacher feels the same way. He like hates it. But ultimately it's whatever you want to do. It's whatever makes you comfortable. That's the most important part. Everybody makes art differently. That's what makes art so wonderful. Alright, so basically what we would do here, we've got our sketch on the top, right? So that way if I'm like drawing some stuff, I can like still see the sketch. And then we're just gonna, we've got our 50% gray, and then we're just gonna kind of tear into this. So one thing I like to do, at least for a little while, I told you about the hotkey with spacing control that like shoots you in and out. When you're working with 2 photos here, what I like to do is keep them like the same, and it's kind of hard to do it when it's like an analog, like I'm just going in like a little bit, like you can't really tell like exactly. And if you do the control plus, it's like incremented. So like right here, I know I've gone in like 2 times, and I can see up here that it's at 25%. So I can click on this window and control plus twice, and now they're like even. So that way I can see when I'm working over here, I've got it over here, and it's like the perfect reference. The other thing that's very, very, very worth mentioning is, you know, normally when you hold down spacebar, you can like move the head around, whatever, but this one doesn't go with it. So then you can't, like if you're trying to like line up this with this, and like you don't have a sketch, or you're trying to do your sketch originally, like it's really hard to tell. So what you can do is you can hold shift and then spacebar, and it will move them together, which is awesome. And then if like one ever gets off from the other, you can just like slam them both into the corner because they're the same size and they'll equal up, and then you just go from there. But this is like super helpful. So that way, like anytime I need to go like up on here, if I want to go like down and draw the bottom of the neck, I just hold shift space, I drag down, they both go down together. It's really easy to just like come over here and grab this, come over here and grab that. It's awesome. I did actually just forget one of the other hotkeys. When you have your brush out, you can hold Alt, and it gives you the eyedropper. And you can come over here and you can click on this one, and you get like this gray color, and then you let go of Alt, and then you can just draw with it. Then you can Alt pick this one, you can Alt pick this one, and you can Alt pick some of the hair, you can Alt pick some of the lips, and blah, blah, blah. It's just, it's super good. It's great. So basically what we're going to do from this point, we're going to go ahead and turn off the transparency, because I just want some like basic colors. Oh man, one other thing I did forget. Hardness. So hardness, if you do it with 100% hardness, it's going to look like these big ol' like blocky circles. And if you do it with 0 hardness, that's when it's like soft. And if you're ever blending, you want it on 0 hardness pretty much all the time. Uh, I think the only time I ever use anything but zero hardness is if I'm laying down like sketching colors, like I'm doing the sketching lines here, or I'm trying to get color down like the first time. So like for example, like let's say I wanted to do this eyeball, and I come in here and I start doing it, because then the issue with having zero hardness is it kind of like leaks out a little bit. So like I'm putting my actual cursor right here on the edge of the sketch line, and it's like leaking out a little bit in this area, and then I have to like try and come back in here with an eraser, and I have to erase it because like maybe I don't want that to be there, or I have to come back in here later and like draw, you know, the actual tone in here or whatever. But then if I'm doing that, maybe it's gonna leak in a little bit. Yeah, it's just not precise, which is what you want if you're blending colors. But if we're just doing like the original sketches, or the original, we're getting like the original color in there for the first time around, maybe you don't want it, because it makes a little bit more work for you later. Is that part of my sketch? Yeah, it's real weird. Got like a, it's like I was eating and I got a little like ketchup on my lip or something. I apologize I was going to say in advance, but I guess it's already happened. You all have to stare at my face the duration of this. It's very, very unpleasant, I would only imagine. So basically from this point we can just say, I like to call my first one like bulk, because it's kind of like if you're working with charcoal or whatever, and you just gotta like block it in. So from here, with this stuff, I think I will go ahead and put the hardness up, because I've got to do these lines here eventually to get rid of the sketch. And so, I mean, ultimately, obviously, I'm not going to have like, oh man, there's this light part here, and then there's this dark part here, like, wow, look at this great painting, like, this is exactly how light looks, like, it's wonderful, it's great. No. But for right now, because you want to like overwrite the sketch, it's just kind of the way to do it. So just kind of go in here with like a moderately small brush. You don't want to work too small, because this is going to take you like the rest of your frickin' life to work this tiny. But you don't want to work so big that like when you get to the ear you can't do that part because your brush is too big. So you just kind of like do something in between. And you can kind of pick leniently, because you're going to come back in here and do it a little bit anyways later. So like it doesn't need to be perfect the first time around. And this is kind of weird anyways, because like this is actually the beard part, and it's like billions of tiny little colors because there's all the little follicles and stuff. So we can even just like save that for later if you want. We could turn on the grid, and then we can kind of see, we could like add to our sketch if we wanted to. We could come in here and be like, okay, the beard is like here, so we'll draw some more little sketching lines, and then it's kind of like fatty over here. This is where, if you're ever trying to draw with a grid, you can see it kind of like stair-stepping. That is because snap is on, which I turned it on earlier, and you do not want that. That's going to be awful. And this will allow it to kind of, because you can see it happened a little bit over here. But you can put those in there if you want. Again, totally personal preference. Let's go back in and just kind of, man, already 25 minutes in. Maybe we'll just do the ear. Who wants to draw my ear today? This is going to be the ear tutorial. I can see now, because my grid is on, that these two are like a little misaligned. So I'm going to go ahead and go all the way up into the corner. So that way, like, if this one is off this way and this one is off this way, they'll eventually, like, the left one will hit, and then this one will keep going, and then it'll hit. So now they're, like, in sync. Not like the band, just like in general. And so, first thing we're going to do, we're going to grab, like, this outside color, and come in here and just go along here in the corners. This is a huge problem I have. I just did it on the wrong layer. So try and be as aware of that as you can, because that gets real frustrating when you start screwing up your layers layers. But it happens. It happens to me a lot, and you just kind of make do. It is worth mentioning. Let me open up the original. I basically pretty much work in one layer as much as I can, because when you're blending stuff and you have multiple layers, it's like a disaster. So like for instance here, group 1 is like all of the face here, and I've got like a couple little extra layers for some small stuff, but for the most part my whole head is just one layer, and that's so you can blend the lighter parts in with the darker parts, because like if they're on an upper layer and then all of a sudden they don't mix together anymore and you can't overwrite something you did on a higher layer because it's on a lower layer and they're supposed to like blend together, it just like doesn't work. The only ones I did here, I did like some little like freckles and moles that I have, because like I wanted them to be like separate and I didn't want to mess with stuff. I did all of the hair separate, because it was just, I mean, it's kind of how it is in reality anyways, like the hair's kind of like on top of your head. And then I started doing like little strands and stuff like that, because these are supposed to be like the ones on top. And I did like the same thing with the beard, and then I did do these 2 layers which are just like a little extra highlights and stuff like that, because they're just like final touches and I didn't want to mess with all the other stuff. But again, for the most part, the only real layering I have here, I've got like the head, and then the head I decided to put on top of the neck, and then I've got the backdrop, which is literally just like random dark junk, just so there's something back there. This right here, this like open opacity stuff, this is what you get when you trace stuff. But then you can kind of fix it a little bit by just doing like a backdrop, and then it just kind of fills it up. Where did my other 2? Oh, don't be a hater. Oh my gosh. Am I not going to be able to get those back? I have this issue. Yeah, see, it's like here. When I click on it, it like gets real mad. I wonder if there's a way to like maximize all of them. I might not be able to get them back. That is so frustrating. Alright. Well, we're doing it live. We're already 25 minutes in. We're just going hard. One other little setup thing. I do have the navigator window open on my other monitor. I don't know how many of you guys are working in a setup where you can have 2 computer monitors, but the nice thing about that is that if you're working like real small on the ear and you're like doing some dark stuff in here and you're like, okay, it seems pretty good, but like I want to be able to look at it full, and I don't want to keep like zooming in, zooming out, zooming in, zooming out. So what I did, I'll show you my other monitor. It's going to look weird because I have the capture software over here too. But I've got the navigator window over here, and so that way when I'm working like really small, when I'm working really small and tiny and like doing little stuff like this, it shows up on like a smaller, like further back scale. It's kind of like when you're like working in person and you like back up from your canvas or whatever to like see what it looks like. So this way I don't have to keep backing up and going back forward. I can just like glance over. But if you don't have 2 monitors, again, you can just kind of like zoom out and zoom back in. But basically, this is all in the head, right? Do I have... Why don't we just do this? We're just going to cover all this up, and we'll start over. One of the cool things, which is what I just did, this whole thing is turning into like me not even drawing and me just talking about my setup. Sorry, this was like 30 minutes of the most boring thing of your entire life. But there's a, over here you can see there's this little lock. And what this does is it like binds where you draw to where you've already drawn. So like if you turn off I've turned off my backdrop, and you can see like this is the ear here, and so like I've painted this area, but this is all blank. So it's the hotkey for that is the question mark. It's the question mark key. You don't actually have to like hit shift. It's the little, I think it's / and not /. It's the one that's next to your shift button, next to the little greater than sign. And when you hit that, it'll turn on this little lock symbol so that when you draw like a line, it stops and it doesn't like keep drawing over here. Whereas if you had that off, you would just draw normally. And that is super helpful. Again, in case I was like working on the shirt or whatever, and I decided like my whole shirt was like not dark enough, I can lock this, and then I can come in here with like a really big brush, and I can do my opacity. I can set it on like 50, and then I can just kind of come in here a little bit and make it a little darker. And it doesn't change my background at all, because it's only applying to what's already here. So that's another like super cool helpful thing. So now if I start working on the head here, and let me pull up my reference again at least. Woo! That's not what I wanted. Let me bring it over here. I guess it can stay. It can stay over there. And so then let me turn off the grid. We can grab this color here, and since I've got this locked, I can just kind of come over here, and I can get like a reasonably big brush, and I can just start filling this area in. And I don't have to worry about getting a tiny brush and like following the contours, because I don't want to like draw over it over in this area. You just lock it, and then you just kind of go. And it's super fast and super awesome. And I am actually using my opacity now, because I've already got this color, this like lighter color here, which is close enough, I think, to what I want, so I don't mind blending a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and grab, I've got this darker shadow here on this color, and then you can hit X to flip. It flips from like your foreground to your background. I'm going to grab this one, so this one and this one, and then I can start putting in the dark part here, and then like the lighter part here, and you can see, that's why I just checked, see how it's like, you can still kind of see the circles and it's not really blending together? That's because I have the hardness on. So, if I erase this, it would look awful, so never mind. If I turn the hardness back down to 0, and I try and do that again, you'll see how different it looks. So see here, now it doesn't look, you can't see those bands as much. The like little circular chunks of like, it looks like I'm drawing with a circle. And now if I back up, you can't see it at all. So basically you just kind of come in here little by little. I'm not worried about keeping these two the same anymore, because I'm not like copying it really. I'm just like using it as a, almost like a color palette. Although I should probably keep it somewhat similar, because I am kind of looking at this for like where this earlobe comes over and stuff. So we're going to grab the light color, grab the dark color, go a little smaller, come in here, and I'm going to press pretty hard, because I want this to be like pretty noticeable. If I was doing it lightly, it would take like forever and ever and ever and ever. And then you just kind of draw in this little contour. I like that. Kind of put in the lighter contour here. I'm actually going to increase my opacity up a little bit, because I feel like it's not showing up enough. Maybe because it's too similar to what I've already got down here, but just because I'm getting like the original color in here, I don't mind being a little bold. And then we're going to grab this color, kind of come in here, a little bit bigger maybe, and really start to like lay in some of these like original tones here. And you can work a little quickly, because this is all rough again. So like this is kind of darker, come down here, this is like quite a bit darker, this is like really dark, come in here with like multiple strokes, hard pressure, really get that in there. And then I don't even need to pick this lighter color, because again I know this is black and white, so I can just use the darker color and just not push as hard, and then I can make these sort of like lighter shadows. And then I can grab like the super light one, get in here, get my highlight, come in here, get this like middle tone, decrease the brush a little bit, make sure I'm staying true to these colors, and like already you can start to see like some of the shaping here. So like we can get some more lighter in here, get some of this middle tone, make sure I'm not going too dark. This is really dark. This is like the cutoff where it stops being inside and it kind of pops out a little bit more. Get a larger brush. The more you work in a smaller brush, the harder it is to really blend across, because you have all of these little individual strokes and it's so hard to like get them to all match together. Whereas if you've got a bigger brush, you can come in here and you can just like, it just really works so much better. But a lot of this stuff is kind of intricate, so I'm kind of skirting the middle here, I guess. Come here and zoom out a little bit so we can get kind of back to our original scale. Can't believe I'm making an ear tutorial. What a weirdo. Come in here and get these darks. This is much, much, much lighter. And then this is like super dark, and then this is like the extremity. So we can try and make sure, I'm looking over here to make sure these are like different enough, and they're kind of not, so I don't think I'm getting the distinction I want. And since this is kind of grainy, sometimes you can get a weird color, like there's this tiny little lighter dot here, and maybe I color pick over here and I get it instead of the dark. So I'm just making sure. This is like really one of the darker parts inside this little fold, and then this is probably one of the lighter parts, and now you can see this is like pretty distinct. So this is probably the lighter part I want on the outside. Again, I'm going to increase my brush a little bit just so it doesn't look like individual strokes and kind of take away the hand. And then this has to be a little small because it's a small area, and then we just kind of darken it up. And I've got to go back in here pretty strong because my first sketch I was using 100% hardness, so you get this obvious line, which we do not want. And so I've got to go in here probably a little harder than I want to, just so I can place it, and then I can come back in and kind of soften it up a little bit. Make sure I'm staying true to the drawing, do another little color pick just because the tones change. It's a little darker in here than it is up here. This part kind of like pokes out a little bit more. Get my little Obama ear going. And get in here and get this kind of like middle tone. It's like a little bit lighter right here because this is where it like catches a little bit. Maybe I don't think that's light enough. I can come in here and kind of pick my own. No big deal. Just do a really light touch just to get it a little bit. Because it's not like it's coming out real hard. It is kind of like a gradual. So then this is where the real blending comes in. So like I've got this color and I've got this color. I'm still 70% is like a really comfortable place for me to work. I feel like I get a lot of control this way. And I can go, this part right here is going to be like totally this color, and this part right here is going to be totally the lighter color. And we've just got to kind of make them meet nicely in the middle. It's like pairing two people that kind of don't agree with each other. And so you just go real light, flip over to the lighter color, go real light again, and you can just kind of play with this back and forth a little bit. And just make sure that the lighter color doesn't get too big, it doesn't encroach too much, and the darker color doesn't get too big and encroach too much either. You just kind of go back and forth a little bit, play with it. This is where it's kind of more like traditional media, I feel like, where you can, it's almost just like you're like pushing and pulling a little bit. You're just kind of like nudging it almost until you get it where you want. And you can come over here, don't hit the wrong key. And then you just kind of get this little loop in here, and then this is much darker, and then this kind of like fades out, so we'll pick that color, we'll come out big, we'll go in light, go back and get the darker color, and we'll try and blend these two together. And this again is a little bit harder because the darkness in here has to be a kind of smaller brush because it's only hitting this one little area, and so it's a little harder to kind of get them to go together. But you can do it. You can even, if you want to, skip this middle tone here and just create it artificially from the light color and the dark color. I still don't think that's dark enough. I'm like not getting a dark enough color for my color pick. Come back in here, that's better. Just kind of go out a little bit and then relax it back a little with the larger brush. Make sure this is extra white, Make sure this is a little darker maybe. Get them to talk to each other a little bit in the middle. And we're getting there. You get the idea. It's basically just this over and over again. It comes down, I guess the process is like you do your really hard, like, I know this part is going to be here, and you like put in your really strong line, right? You're like, for sure this is going to be here. And then you're like, okay, for sure this part's going to be here. And then they have to touch. So you just do your little opacity bit, you go a little big, and you just kind of pop back and forth between the two colors. And eventually, it's a little finesse. You just kind of get them to meet. And if you keep having trouble, like if you're just not... When I first started this, I think with this drawing, when I was blending, I worked at 30 or 40% because I just wasn't comfortable making little itty-bitty light marks. So you can totally do that. You don't have to feel bad about it. My teacher like shamed me a little bit. Not really. I felt ashamed. He was like totally fine. He works at 100% like all the time. Because he's just like, he has like master level control with like all the little intricate like small tender little presses with the pen. And I just don't have that yet. And that just probably comes with time. So like here we can work at 30%. And you can see it's way easier to just get these light little influences on each other. And it's a lot easier to make these middle tones and to make them a lot more gradual with the lighter opacity. But if you're working at 70%, faster. So basically what I like to do, maybe you start at 100%, you get the sketching or whatever, you get some general lines. And then I like to work at 70. 70 is like my comfort zone. You start to like lay in for sure. You're like, I know this is dark. I'm going to lay it in at 70%. I know this is light. Lay it in, lay it in. And then your 30% is where you start to go like, okay, this is very gradual, very light. And you just kind of work it in. You have your little Bob Ross moment where you're like, one with the painting, and you're just like hugging each other and like holding hands and stuff and like doing all the super nice wonderful things. And eventually you get something that looks like a digital painting, and then you feel really good about yourself, and then you make a super awkward tutorial for all of your friends later. And that's the circle of digital painting life in college. So I hope this was at least like marginally helpful to a non-zero number of people. I hope my weird little talking candor wasn't super frustrating. I hope you guys didn't mind staring at my eyeball. And I hope you guys start to make super cool paintings if that's what you're doing. And if you're just like my parents and you wanted to watch the things that your son creates, I hope that was good too. Okay? Thanks.